Police fanned out across the centre of Australia's second-largest city of Melbourne on Wednesday in a bid to keep a lid on a third day of protests over COVID-19 lockdown curbs, as the state of Victoria recorded another rise in infections. Police made more than 60 arrests on Tuesday after more than 2,000 protesters damaged property, blocked a busy freeway and injured 3 police after authorities shut construction sites for 2 weeks to limit the spread of the disease. Protesters again gathered in groups roaming across city streets on Wednesday despite pleas for them to remain home, but largely avoided clashes with busloads of police, while State Police Chief Shane Patton vowed to prevent more violence. By early afternoon, television footage showed several hundred protesters had gathered at the Shrine of Remembrance, a memorial near the city centre honoring service in war, under the watch of police. The protests followed a decision by authorities to make vaccines mandatory for construction workers and to enforce the closure of building sites from Tuesday, citing noncompliance with health rules. Authorities and union officials have said extremist and far-right groups had joined the protest. Protesters have refused to speak to reporters on the scene, chanting fake news when approached, media said. Australia's largest cities of Sydney and Melbourne, as well as its capital, Canberra, have been in lockdown for weeks to contain a Delta outbreak. It is the 6th lockdown for Melbourne, the most of any Australian city since the pandemic began. Authorities aim to resume daily activities in Sydney and Melbourne in a staggered fashion, easing some curbs when the share of fully vaccinated adults in the population reaches 70%, which is expected next month. Further relaxations will follow when the figure hits 80%. Some 54% of people aged 16 and above are fully vaccinated in the most populous state of New South Wales and 45% in Victoria. Despite the easing talk, Sydney cancelled plans for a traditional 9 p.m. New Year's Eve fireworks display for a second year in a row, but will probably stick with plans for a separate midnight display. A city spokesperson said authorities aim to limit the mixing of crowds between the two. Victoria recorded 628 new infections on Wednesday, the year's biggest one-day rise, exceeding the previous high of 603 a day before. New South Wales, whose capital is Sydney, had a total of 1,035 new infections, up from 1,022 on Tuesday. Australia's tally of infections stands at about 90,300, including 1,186 deaths, with 8 new deaths reported.